So you came back from your recent trip and then you look back at your footage only to find unnecessary objects or people in your videos, and you just wish that you didn't capture them and now you're trying to get rid of them. So in this lesson, we're going to see how we can fix videos, and by fix I mean removing unwanted objects and also adding to the camera blur if needed. And then finally, after doing that, we're going to export our footage and see just how we can export things in After Effects. So let's go ahead and import our footage. We have 5 videos. Just drag them all in. Now let's start with the removing unwanted objects. I have 2 videos for that. Start with this one. Just drag it into your composition. Change this to fit. So I have this video of this person with their dogs, but there's this one dog in the back, which may be his dog, but we're just going to assume that it's some random dog and it may be ruining the footage for the person with his dogs. So I'm going to let it run for a few seconds, maybe 4 seconds, cut the rest. Just because I want everything to render quickly for this lesson, hit N to bring in your workspace. So this is what we have. This random dog in the back is just jumping around, and we're going to get rid of him. And to do that, we're going to need something that is relatively new to After Effects, which is the Content Aware Fill. If you've worked with Photoshop, that should be pretty familiar to you. Essentially, what it does is that you select an area, and then the program, which was originally Photoshop, is going to figure out the content around that area that you selected, and it's going to use those elements to fill up your area. For example, if I selected this dog and I ask After Effects to perform the Content Aware Fill, it's going to look around the selection, which was here, and it's going to replace this dog with these little waves. So that's how it works, and it's a really cool feature when it comes to videos because we all have that random object in our footage that we wish we didn't capture. But as of 2019, there was a new tool introduced to After Effects, and that tool allows us to fix the issue and for us to not deal with those unnecessary subjects in our footage. But I would highly recommend that you are on the latest version of After Effects, which is the 2021 version currently, and that way when we talk about a certain panel, certain effect, you're getting the exact same options and the exact same effect. So that if you have an older version, you're going to get a completely different outcome compared to what I show in this course. So make sure you have an updated version. All right, let's go ahead and get our Content Aware tab. Go to Window, come down to Content Aware Fill. It's going to show up here. Let me just drag it here. And so this is what we have. Essentially, it's just a black screen and some alpha stuff, and we're going to get into them soon. So what we want to do first is to mask out the person, the object that we want. So I'm just zooming in, getting my hand tool to just get real close to the object. Hit G on your keyboard to get the pen tool. You can see the mask icon. Make sure you're selecting it or else you'll get the star icon. Select the layer, get the mask icon. Just create a big box that surrounds that object. So this is what we have. And what we want to do is to create the alpha channel. So open this up or just hit M twice to get the mask properties. Instead of add, go for subtract. So you can see the video is like that, but we have a black box here. All right, so the problem is that this is a video and the dog is moving around. Let me hit this to none so we can first determine the mask path and then we can change that. So when I play this video, you can see this dog is just going everywhere, and that little box will not be sufficient for him because as we go in, you can see he comes out of that box. So what we need to do is to just activate the mask path, turn it on, move into the time where he's getting out of frame, which is here. Hit V on your keyboard and just Control T, move the mask here. Move in more. And then we're going to, again, Control T, move it to the right. And we would just have to do this and make sure the subject is within our mask layer, no matter what, until the end of our footage. It's going to come here, Control T, move the box here. You could also make the box bigger with the pen tool. Edge. I don't need to because the dog does not like stand up or jump really high. But I do need to do it right now. So all you need to do is just get the pen tool, hit G on your keyboard, click away, go on the mask again. And we're just going to, you can also just double click and expand it actually. Expand the mask. Now let's make sure, I'm gonna go from the beginning, I'm gonna hit Edge and go in with my time indicator and make sure that the dog stays within frame. And around here, I do want to make the, let me delete this, because we're going to be feathering the edge. I don't want his tail to be feathered out. Do that. Go with the pen tool and just double click to expand the mask and just put it here. Then let's play it back. You can see it gets bigger. Just making sure that, okay, we get the same problem with the tail. So around here, I want to see, where was it? It was here. Double click, make it bigger. Delete this one. The less points you have, the better. So if you saw that maybe you need to delete some points and then replace them with new ones, feel free to do that. And I'm just going to make my mask bigger for this entire footage. Should have done that from the beginning. Not too big, but enough so the tail doesn't like move out of the mask. Double click, move it here, make it bigger if needed. Alright, and I'm going to play this back slowly and make sure that the dog is within my box at all times. Playing this back. And I guess in the beginning I'll also delete this and just make the mask bigger. Oops, I went in the layer. Click one of the corners and then do that. Let's play this back and see if it's all good. We do have an issue here, which I'm going to fix by just deleting this, opening this up, making it bigger. Let's see. Alright, so we should be good for this. We have our dog just completely within the box. And now we can go ahead and just change this from none to subtract. So now it's black instead of the opposite, which by default it would be add. So everything would be removed except for the area that you selected, but subtract is the exact opposite. So everything is there except for the selection. So now that we have this, we're going to go in the content aware fill tool And we're going to add some alpha expansion because we do want the edges of our new fill layer to be feathered out and for it to blend in with the existing footage. And to do that, we need to expand the alpha a bit. Let's go for like 14, just a good number. And then below that, we have some fill methods. I'm just going to quickly explain what these are. So the one you would use most would be the object, because when you film things, the subject is going to be moving around. And a lot of times the camera itself is going to be moving around too, like our example here. So if you are dealing with an object or a person that is moving, and so is the camera, just a lot of movements, you want to go for the object fill method. And this is going to be the most helpful. But there are times where your video is still and it's the person or object is placed on top of a solid background. Let's say it's like a painting, something like that, and you want to get maybe some small detail out, you would go for surface. So when you choose surface, you have less movements. And edge blend would just be the edges of whatever you have. Could be a picture or something. But you wouldn't be using this that often, but it's still good to know what each of them do. The most helpful one will be object, so I'm just going to choose that. We don't need lightning correction, and then down here you can choose the range. You can either choose work area, which this is our work area that we brought down to 4 seconds, or you could choose entire duration. I'm just going to leave it on work area. The entire duration would be your full video, which we trimmed down to 4 seconds, but if it was full, it would do the entire 7 seconds, even if our workspace was down to 4 seconds. And then below that, we have the create reference frame. Basically, what this is going to do, it's going to open this into Photoshop. And in Photoshop, you would do the content aware fill yourself. And then After Effects, it's going to use what you did in Photoshop and apply that to its own process. So if you do know Photoshop and you saw that the fill layer wasn't generating properly and there was some issues, you can always just create a reference frame and kind of help After Effects with the task. So we have generate fill layer. Before that, it's going to ask you to save your project. So just go ahead and save your project. All right, I saved my project and then it's going to start analyzing everything. You can see we now have a fill layer. I'm going to let it do its thing. If I bring this down, my timeline, you can see it's analyzing. Down here, it's going to take a while. Depends on how complicated your object is and how long your video is. So it's going to first analyze it, and then it's going to fill it in, and then it's going to render. Simple process. So I'm going to let this do its thing, and then I'll be back so we can see how well it did. Alright, it finished analyzing and rendering and all of that. And you can see the dog is gone, but it's a bit sharp. We need to fix that. And by fix, all we can do is to just feather out the edges. So let's bring back our timeline. Alright, I'm going to close this info panel. We don't need it. So as you can see, we have a fill layer. And if we solo this layer, you can see we have this little box. If I get rid of this fill layer, we have the original black box that we saw before we use the content aware fill tab. So what we can do is to just bring this below. As you can see, we're just getting the mask thing. So like we would with any other mask layers, we could just feather out the edges, maybe work with the opacity, and just do things that will allow for a nice little blending. Okay, I'm going to play this back and see exactly what's going on. So you can see at some points it's nicely blended in, but in other times it's a bit sharp. As you can see, it's kind of weird, but that's just how the blending works in this place. Once you look at it from the back, we are like everything is smooth until like things start to get smooth from this point on, around 2 seconds. And in here, it's nicely blended in, but in the beginning, it's a bit, I guess, sharp, you could say. So you could do this multiple times if you need to get the perfect thing. See here, it goes down like this. So yeah, this is what we have. We could do this again to make sure it's better. And let's actually try that. Or better yet, we'll try it with another video, so we won't make this lesson too long. So, if this was your problem, you could just easily add to the alpha expansion. Clearly 14 wasn't enough, so in the next video we'll add more, and hopefully we won't get these sharp bits, which, like we said, it's only visible like in the beginning. Here on, you can see it fades out, and we're not really seeing the dog as much. Alright, so this was the first video. Now we got an idea of how this thing works. We can now move on with the second example and use what we've learned with the first one, which is related to the alpha expansion, and apply it to the second video. So the second video was, I believe, this guy. Click and drag it onto this box to make a new composition. You can close this if you need to, but you can leave it on for reference, just in case you forgot what the next steps were. You can come in here and notice that it's subtract, and then you can open this. It may help you, so you can leave this on. I'm gonna come here, and now we have another footage, and what I'm trying to get rid of in this one is this little rock and this little thing in the back. Not sure what that is. So we do have a rather long video. It's 40 seconds. So I'm just going to crop this to 5 and then expand the workspace. And then let it render so we can see what we're working with. So compared to the first video, we have a still object, which, by the way, you could easily use the clone stamp tool to get rid of it because it's not moving. But we're going to focus on the content aware fill, and this will be relatively easier because we have a rather stable area all around this object. So by default, content aware fill needs to look at the areas around, and it should be able to do a decent job compared to the first video where it was on the wave line, which could be different with each frame, but here we have a rather still and stable object. All right, so you can see the camera is moving, but it's not shaky. It's simply just zooming in onto the 3 subjects that we have. Let's go ahead and just do what we did before. Get the pen tool while selecting your mask, your layer, and then just go around. And zoom in if you need to. Just go around and create like a rather large thing. Hit M twice to open the mask properties. Set this to none so you can determine the mask path. I'm going to move in a few frames and see if I even need to. Okay, I do need to because it goes to the corner. Simply turn on your mask path. Go into the part where it starts to go to the right. Hit V and just hit Ctrl T to move the mask a bit to the right. Move in a few frames. And I'm still going to just bring it a little bit here. I do want to make sure it's in the center and not in the corner. The last part, using the anchor point to place the subject in the center. So once I play this back, or just comb through it with the time indicator, I'm gonna go here actually and Control T, just bring this a bit to the right, the left, sorry. All right, so now I'm looking at my clip and it's completely within the box. Now we can go ahead and set this from none to subtract. We have this black box now. And again, just we're gonna add to this alpha expansion. Let's go with 25. You can see it expands it. But again, because we don't have much going on around the object that we're trying to get rid of, this will be a piece of cake. Now, the thing is, we have two different objects that we're trying to get rid of. And the thing with the control aware fill is that you cannot, the content aware fill, is that you cannot do multiple things at once. So I need to create one fill layer for this, another one for this, and another one for this. So it's not like it's not something that you can maybe hold down shift to add to that selection. You would have to do it separately. All right, fill methods is still object, and we're just gonna hit and ranges work area, generate fill layer. It's going to do its thing. We already have the layer, and again, we have to wait until this finishes. I'm gonna close this and just open this up a bit so I can see the analyze bar as it's progressing. So again, I'm gonna wait for this, let it do its thing, and then I'll be back so we can, so once this is done, we're going to make, I think we can go with a long mask. Let's see if we can, we'll see if we can fit these two into one long mask layer, and then we'll do this again with the same process. I'm gonna do both and then I'll be back so we can continue. All right, so I did the mask thing for both of these areas. As you can see, we have two fill layers and we have two mask layers down here. So because we had the horizon here, we do have the same issue as we did in the first video. And for moments like this, it's a lot better if you could create a reference frame in Photoshop, but I won't be getting into that because that would be a Photoshop tutorial. But if you do know how to use Photoshop, all you have to do is to just click this and you're going to get a PNG sequence where you could remove that object yourself using either the clone tool or the heal tool, anything that you want. And then you're going to just bring it back here to help After Effects better analyze and remove the objects. All right, I'm going to close this and we're just going to bring both of these fill layers below the video layer, like that. And then in the video layer, I'm going to open this up, go to mask 1, hit M twice, and we're just going to feather out the first mask feathering. You can see if I go past 26, we start to get these black lines. So try to do it just before you start to see them. And like we said, because this area there isn't much going on, this had a lot better result compared to the one on top. But we're still going to try to fix the second one. So go in mask 2. And we're also going to feather it out just before we start to see the thing. So when I go past this, you can see after our mask, we have this area, and that's where the alpha expansion comes in. So the 25 that we added is the area between the mask that we created and the outline here. So I can just do it like so. And I'm going to close this off, play it back to let it render first. Now for this example, because we have our main subjects in the front and the objects that we didn't want in the back, we could actually fix this further by adding a camera blur effect. So we're going to make it look like whoever took this video had created a depth of field, and therefore the stuff in the front is sharp and the background is blurred out like a real camera would give a result. So I'm going to let this render, but You can see we don't really need to do it here. We're mostly going to focus on this area where you can see there's like a patch of the sky, and that's not looking very natural. Gonna zoom out of this. Also click fit. Like it's really in the back, but it's still kind of noticeable. But once we add a nice little blurring effect to the back past this third subject, like from here, we could make things look better. Just a little bit more. And I'm going to explain in a second why we are not using Gaussian blur and we're using camera lens blur instead. When you search blur, you have a lot of options, so it's important to know which one to use and which one is going to be best for the result that you are looking for. You can see it's in the back, not looking so good. Pause this, go to the effects and presets and search for blur. And come down to blur and sharpen. You can see we have a lot of options. So we're going to go to camera lens blur. So the camera lens blur, as the name says, it's going to imitate the blur that you would get from a real camera lens, which lets you have a more realistic look as if the video was already blurred like this. But when you use Gaussian blur, you're using a really clone-like blurring effect, and that's not something you would get with the camera lens, because the camera lens, it's going to blur based on the focal length, but the Gaussian blur is just going to blur everything at once. So you're going to have kind of repetitive blurring pixels all around, but that's not the case with the camera lens. Just click and drag it on top of your video. And here we have a lot of options. So I'm going to set this to 0, and the iris properties is basically the eye of the lens. And this is more visible with like when you have lights in the background. For example, it's nighttime and there's like street lights. You would be able to see this property a lot more better because you're going to be creating bokehs. And basically, they're like these little circular light things. And when you change this, you're changing the amount of blades that the camera would have. So if you've seen maybe movies of, or just any image, let me actually get one so it's easier to explain. So I just came to Google just to show you what I mean. When we add more to the sides of our pentagon, we're going to get a round bokeh effect. Like here, you can see it's circles, or even down here. So if you go all the way down to the largest sides of our pentagon, we will get a circular thing. But if we choose go at the top of our drop down, let me just come back here. So the first option is triangle. So this is 3 blades for our camera lens. So this will give us a bokeh effect with sharper edges. But if we go to the one in the back with the highest number of sides, we're going to get circular bokehs. So that's basically what it means. But in our examples, the ones that we have, we don't really have night lights to see this effect clearly. So I'm just going to quickly bring in an example so we can see how exactly this works. Gonna drag this into this guy to make a composition. You can see here we have some street lights. And we're going to apply this on top. And we get to choose the thing. Let's go for a pentagon. Add to the blur. Oops, let's go for like 15. It's too much, 30. But you can see we're getting these sharp edges. Let's try 20. There we are. You can see we're getting these sharp edges. But if I go all the way down to decagon, we're going to get a circle. So this is this guy. This is the one we had before. So it's sharper when it's closer to the top. So if you go on triangle, it's literally triangles. So this is how it works. If you want a circle, just go here. You can add to the roundness if you want. Make it circle. Add rotation and just anything else that you want. But this is basically how it works. And if you play this, it's going to be here for the entire clip. I'm just going to comb through to show it to you. You can see it's there, no matter what light it is. So that's how this works, but we're not going to be getting to the iris properties for this video because we don't have a problem with the iris. Turn this to fit, and we're going to just add to this thing. Let's try 10. See how it works. You can see we blurred out everything. We are on hexagon. Now you could add a blur map. I'm not going to. And instead of adding this camera blur to the entire clip, I'm just going to delete that and just add a blurring effect directly on the content aware layers. That way I can keep the sharpness of my subjects. So I'm just going to get Gaussian blur on top of the content aware sequence. Yeah, that was it. Just drag that on top. And I'm just going to blur this out. And we're just blurring it out. Just go to the point where you're not seeing the black bits. You can see now it's a lot better. So it's the before, this is the after. Zoom in. Before, after. So you can see it's a lot better than it was. And we just used Gaussian blur. Alright, so it's a lot better now that we have blurred it, and it's going to look like this. We're going to try the camera lens blur on another video. So this was how the content aware fill works. Let's go to another video. Let me just delete that composition. Let's get another footage like this. Drag it onto this guy to make a new composition. And this is an instant where the camera lens blur will look cool. We have these two subjects that will look nice with this effect. So Control D on your main layer, and in the one on top, we're going to get the pen tool and just roughly go around, or better yet, we could just roto brush this dude. Cut this to a really short amount. I don't want this to take too long. Just cut this here. Get the roto brush, this guy. And this is the top layer, by the way. Click twice to enter here and then get the roto brush. And just select both of the subjects. Make sure that all the parts are in. Get the little belt here. And a bit of her hair. And hold down Alt to remove. So I'm going to remove this little area. There we are. And I'm just going to close this guy for a second. And then we're going to freeze this. Hit play, let it freeze this. So what we're going to do is to apply the camera lens blur in the back because we want our main subjects, which are these two people, to stay focused while the background is blurred. Alright, so now we have the video. I'm going to come back in here. If I turn off the first video, you can see we have our subject like this. And the first video, the video that we just roto brushed, I'm going to add some feathering. Let me turn the layer below it off. Just add a few feathering options. Did realize half her face is gone. We can add to the edge. And I'm going to leave this be because it's placed on top of the video. It's not going to be that big of a deal. So now that we have this, we can go ahead and get our effects and preset window that we just closed. Get the camera lens blur on the layer below, not the one on top. And I'm just going to turn off, let me first name it. Name this to subject. And then down here, let's call this blur. So turn off the subject layer for a second. We're going to go on the blur layer and we're going to just get our pen tool and we'll roughly zoom out so you can get a big selection. We don't want our mask to be moving around. We're roughly going to select the area that we want blurred. So you gotta think of this as a real camera would do. So it wouldn't make sense if everywhere except for these guys are blurred out, because that's just not how cameras work. Cameras have the focal lengths, so that means that the things that will be blurred will be in the back, which you could see it's already a little blurred, and I'm simply going to just add to that. Alright, so what we're going to do is that now that we have our subject pulled out, we're going to just get camera lens blur, put it on our blur layer, and we're just going to add until the area is good. Now we have to mask this blur layer and just remove this area. So just grab the pen tool and we're going to just select from the area where the blur would start, which would be around here. And just roughly go around your subject. We could always come back and just make it perfect with some feathering and all that. So don't worry if it's too much. And the sky isn't that important because the sky doesn't really get blurred out. It's just a flat color. But what is important is that you select around your subject. Zoom in for a better look. That way we get a more precise selection. Bring this in closer. You can work with the handles if it's maybe too tall or too short. Select on your last point to continue the mask. Switch between H and G to just make things faster. Cut the handle, get the hair, and just go around. Bring this a bit higher and just go around the edge, which we went a little too high. I'm going to delete the last point and then select out and try to expand the mask a bit larger than you usually would. So now we have this blur effect like this, and I'm going to duplicate this. Delete the effects and the mask from this layer. So I'm going to rename this to BG for background. So now we have the blur. We just need to feather it out so it looks more natural. Go to the mask one, just feather the mask completely. Like so, you can see it's feathered out. And I'm going to close this off. Fit, click away. Now we have a nice little blur effect, but 27 is too high. You gotta always go for a low number. Let's try 10, maybe 15, 14. Just to get a more realistic look, hit M to close everything. And now we have a realistic blur effect. I'm gonna let this render. It's only 5 seconds. Actually, it's only 1 second. And we now have a nice blurring effect in the background. You can see it stays still and our subjects are sharp. This is what it would look like without our roto brush layer. You can see it's kind of rough, but once you add this, they're sharp. Let me zoom in to show you guys what I mean. This is without it. You can see the edges are blurred out because we feathered the mask. But if you turn this back on, it's sharp again. So that's why we have a roto brush layer. And yeah, so that's how you use the lens blur effect. It's a lot more realistic than Gaussian blur, like we explained. And now we had like one more video. You could use this video to practice your blur, but since the lesson is really long, I'm just gonna end it here. And now let's say this is your video and you want to export it. So exporting in After Effects is actually pretty simple. I'm gonna Control-Shift-T to just get rid of the rest. I'm gonna delete this one. You have a 1 second clip. Go to Composition, Add to Render Queue. You're gonna get this. Render settings, you can click on it. You usually want the best. Make sure resolution is full because we set it to third here. Make sure it's not third. And usually we'll just leave everything as it is because it's the original videos thing. So like the frame rate, the size, just let it be, hit OK. And then we have output module. Make sure it's lossless. And also here's where you get to choose the format. So if you want an MP4, just go to QuickTime. This is MP4, but you can choose AVI, MP3 if it's just sound, W8V if you want, just anything that works for you. But the default for MP4, where it's the formats that is acceptable everywhere, just get QuickTime to get that MP4. Post-render action. Like you're telling After Effects what to do after you have exported this video. Usually I would just go with none, but if you wanted to import something, you would do this. And channels, we'll just leave it be. The original footage settings will be here. Hit OK. Log errors only, let that be. Output 2, this is where you choose the location, and until you don't choose a location, you cannot export it. So just click here, and I did forget to mention something. QuickTime is actually MOV, not MP4, but MOV is still acceptable. Just choose that, hit OK. And now we have the render button. We also have the QNAME option, which is Adobe Media Encoder. That is a separate program. But I'm just going to hit render, and it shouldn't take that long. It's just a 1 second clip. You can stop or pause, and we're just going to wait for this to export, and then you will have your very own clip. So if you do want MP4, you will have to export it to Media Encoder. And the whole purpose of that program, there isn't much to learn about it, is to export things to different formats. And that program is actually really helpful, especially if you want to continue your work in After Effects, but you want to export things at the same time. Just make sure that your computer can process all of that activity. So that's how you export videos in After Effects. It was really simple, and again, if you want to export into different formats, you can just download Adobe Media Encoder and just export multiple videos at once. If you are planning to get more advanced with video editing, animations, or just any sort of editing that requires motion, I would highly recommend that you get Adobe Media Encoder. It's going to help you out a lot. So I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson, and I'll see you guys in the next one.